listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, we are a part of the CLNS network of podcasts. Make sure you check all those shows, all those great shows out. As always, your boy Pat Lane here with my guy Matt St. Jean. And Matt, here we are. Finally, the end of the first night of the draft. It finally came, and here we are. I am podcasting in God knows where, just an awful spot with terrible reception, but getting it in nevertheless, because that's what we got to do on Christmas night.
Yeah, no, and it's nice to finally have the draft here. It wasn't like a crazy first. There was a lot of hype that this might be like a wild first round, and outside of a trade at the top, it didn't feel that crazy to me.
Yeah, a few trades, obviously. A few people ended up trading into the 20s as well, but outside of that first trade, there was really no surprises. We all kind of knew what was coming, and I think anyone that really paid attention saw what was happening. I thought Cleveland did a great job of getting as much value as they possibly could for that number one pick, right? And they got a second rounder and a first rounder next year for Travis Hunter. And listen, I think Travis Hunter is a phenomenal player. I don't know if I would have given that up for Travis Hunter. No. I honestly don't. And so, hey, kudos to Jacksonville. That's what they want to do. But man, it's that's not what I don't know if I would have done it.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty horrendous overpay for Jacksonville. That said, love Travis Hunter, the player. That's an electric fit.
Yep.
Super excited about what that's going to look like and what that could mean for Trevor Lawrence. Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. together. That's a lot of fun. I like that. And it'll make the defense better too. So I really like the fit. I like that fit more than I liked Travis Hunter with the Browns or with the Giants. I'll say that much.
Yeah,
or the Titans. So, excited for that. And for Cleveland, you still get, an elite defensive line prospect. Yeah. And an extra first next year and an extra second this year. So for a team in cap hell with their quarterback situation, they have a lot of potential outs here with their draft capital, which I think is huge for them.
Yeah. No, and I really think that was a huge move for them to move back, pick up a ton of extra capital. And again, maybe they were in on Travis Hunter and they convinced them not to take Travis Hunter, but even if that was the case, they got a lot for him. And to have an early second-round pick tomorrow night, now 2 early second-round picks tomorrow night, and then also have a first-round pick again next year. Now they have 2 first-rounders next year. It's huge for them. So, and if they want to
Jacksonville, so one of those picks both of those picks should be relatively high.
You feel like they should be, yeah. Yeah, and so that's the thing. That's a big risk for Jacksonville to take. But again, they're betting on Trevor Lawrence, and I think someone said it best, and I forget who it was. It may have been Coach Chaos over there that said, if Trevor Lawrence can't make it work with these guys, like he's never going to make it work. You got BTJ and yeah. But it's just like it's if he can't make that jump to elite quarterback, he's never going to do it. With these weapons. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I like that,
Well, I think then you look at the Cleveland side of this. Man, a lot of things have gone wrong in Cleveland with this current group. But it's clear that there is some internal organizational stability there. Yeah. Because trading out of this spot in the situation you're in when you don't have an answer at quarterback, this is only you can only make this trade if everyone in the building is on the same page and ownership knows, hey, we're probably going to stink again this season, and that's just going to have to be okay. We're going to go get the quarterback next year. That's a sign, I think, of a well-run organization, of knowing what battles to pick. And it's very crazy to say this, not just about the Cleveland Browns, but this particular iteration of the Cleveland Browns. But I think just smart move there long term. I think this is going to be really good for them. And Travis Hunter is a guy, as a prospect, who kind of exists in a weird space in terms of trade value. I'll have to see what the value charts say about this, but I think they clearly paid a premium for him. It's not quite a quarterback level trade, but it's closer to that than you might think for a guy like this. And I think that's really because you get to try him. Like, he is an all-pro level prospect at two different positions. The fact that you get to try him at both means his floor is so much higher than any other prospect, and like the level of certainty you get with Travis Hunter is so high that it's worth paying that extra premium for
it. Well, I think that's the big thing, right? It comes down to the fact that, you get what I believe, and a lot of people believe, to be the best wide receiver and the best cornerback in the draft. And a guy that, has not only all pro potential, but all pro potential at both positions. And that's incredible, and so I think that's really a big thing for me. So again, we'll see where it goes. But I was really happy with Cleveland, and I thought the Giants, the Giants are at 3, and they take Abdul Carter, which everyone expected, and then they trade back into the first round, and they really didn't give up a ton to move back into the first round, right? They gave up their second and third round pick this year, and their third round pick next year to move up into the second round. That's nothing, comparatively speaking. We saw what the Falcons gave up. So, I thought that made a heck of a lot of sense, and they go with their number one quarterback, which is Jackson Dart. And I thought, it was a solid move for them. It was a case where Brian Daboll is looking at it and saying, "Hey, like we got to make a move, right?" And I'm a guy where I'm on the hot seat. We're in trouble here. We got to take the best player available because Abdul Carter has a chance to be an all-pro level guy, but we also need to have a quarterback. And I think that you do that with him, with Jackson Dart, and I think that makes a ton of sense for them to do. And he's already come out and said that that Russell Wilson is their starting quarterback, but I thought it was a smart move to go out and get a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's probably the right move. I don't love Jackson Dart, but you got to make a move somewhere to try for something, and to do that without giving up your future first and also still getting Abdul Carter, I think I can swallow that. I just don't love anyone in the second tier quarterbacks. I don't love the idea of trading up for any of them, but I get the reality of the business here. You hope Dart works out there if you're the Giants, and I am curious about this. Like, you're in a very weird spot with this team now because, like, your timeline. Because if Russ is going to be your starter and you're saying we're going to sit, let's say they say we're going to sit Dart for a full year and let him come in the next year. Ideally, you'd want to know after this year what you have in Dart going into next year. So, if you got to use that first, because your team's probably not going to be that good and you're probably going to be picking high, and you want to know if you should be using that first on a quarterback next year. I mean, that's real. Russell Wilson's not that good at this point, and neither is Jameis Winston. So I think if Jackson Dart can't beat out those guys for the starting job this year, that probably tells you a lot about what you have in him and what you need to do next year. It just puts you in a weird spot where you're taking first-round quarterback in consecutive years and potentially taking a first-round quarterback next year after having seen way less than a full season of a guy this year. But, we saw the Cardinals did with Josh Rosen going into Kyler Murray, and that was 100% the right call for them. So, this might be a situation where a year from now we're sitting here and the Giants are already pulling the plug on things. But again, you got to turn over every stone looking for a quarterback.
Well, and I think the big thing for me is that, when you sit there and look at, all right, what's the situation? If I'm Brian Daboll, I'm doing everything in my power to have Jackson Dart play as early as possible because he's a guy he's on the hot seat. Like, big time on the hot seat. And so, you know, maybe Jackson Dart isn't going to save his job, but if I don't play the kid, I'm never going to find out. And my team's going to suck again because Russell Wilson isn't good and the rest of the roster is fine but not very good. And so I'm going to end up with a team that stinks. And so now where am I at, right? I took a guy that I'm never going to be able to use, and so it's stupid and it's foolish, you know. And so that's going to be the situation that they're in. And so I think for him, he's going to want to, you know, play him as early as we can. Because, again, the Josh Rosen situation you mentioned, they draft Josh Rosen, and then the coach gets fired, right? And so now a new coach comes in, gets rid of Josh Rosen, and you know, and hires drafts Kyler Murray. So, you know, if you're Daboll and you want to save your job, the way to do it is not to sit Jackson Dart on the bench. The way to do it is to play Jackson Dart as early as possible. And so we'll see if that's what they do. But you know, nevertheless, that's where they're at. So
yeah, I want to call it two other things in the first round that stood out to me, and this I think will segue us nicely into an ad break and then some Will Campbell discussion. One of them, New York Jets here, operating like a well-run organization. Back-to-back years go and tackle. They get Olu Fashanu last year. They get Armand Membu this year. In theory, the Jets now have their franchise tackles, left and right. Can lock that in for, you know, those guys pan out the way they're hoping the next decade, which is a really good spot to be in if you're the Jets. And I think you combine that with the fact that when Aaron Rodgers came in, they basically told them to shove it. I'm a little bit scared that the Jets might actually be run by competent people right now. Like, that scares me. Which, on that note, also division rivals being run by competent people. The Dolphins fighting off the urge to take Matthew Golden at 13 and actually taking a lineman. A little scared me a little bit. But the other pick that caught my eye here, Kelvin Banks to the Saints. So the Saints last year took Talise Fuaga, short-armed offensive tackle to play left tackle. 3-year starter, young prospect at Oregon State. He was their starting left tackle last year. This year you take Kelvin Banks, who was also a young 3-year starter at left tackle for Texas, but someone who a lot of people have projected is either going to go to guard or right tackle. I think he was announced as a tackle. Curious what the Saints decide to do here. Because they have two guys at tackle who they just drafted in consecutive first rounds who athletically might actually be better fits inside. But you wonder if they like Banks at left tackle, Fuaga, the tackler they took last year with short arms, do they move him to the right side where it might fit him a little bit better? Those two teams there taking tackles in back-to-back years I thought was interesting from a team planning perspective. And maybe something the Patriots should be looking at and keeping in the back of their minds right now.
I totally agree. I thought that what the Jets did was genius because the concern with Membu was, you know, he has a little bit of the length concerns as well, but the biggest concern was the fact that he was a right tackle who hadn't played left tackle. And we can make all the excuses in the world about the fact of why he didn't play left tackle, but the fact is that they brought in a guy to play left tackle instead of moving him over to left tackle. And if that was a thing,
wasn't good in 2023.
And that's the thing, right? Now, if he was a guy that, you know, that could do that easily, well, it would have been something that was done, right? And so we could make the argument that, well, we don't know how it's going to work if you move over to the left side. Well, you're the Jets. You have your left tackle of the future in Olu Fashanu. Or Fashanu, I don't know how to pronounce it. Doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But you have your left tackle of the future. You draft Armand Membu. You know he can play right tackle, and so you draft him to play right tackle for you. And so unfortunately, the Jets do something competent, which is, you know, not good to see, as you say. And the Saints, I agree with you. You know, my big thing is that, and one of the reasons why I love what Vrabel is doing, and we'll talk about it as we get through it, but the big thing is that we have to protect the quarterback and we have to be able to rush the quarterback. Those are the two most important things that we have to do, especially in today's NFL. And so to invest in the trenches, we see it over and over and over again. right? The Eagles just did it again. They traded up for Jahad Campbell today. I know he's not off defensive line, but he is that front seven. And so, you get back into this like, all right, we got to be able to rush the passer in the front seven, and we got to be able to protect the passer in the offensive line. And those are the two most important positions on the field. Obviously, quarterback is there. Clearly, that's number one. But then you have to be able to do those two other things, right? And wide receiver is important as well. But I feel like if you can't protect the quarterback, your wide receivers don't matter. And maybe you can get by every now and again on an off year like the Bengals did. But if you don't have the guys, you're not going to be able to do it. And so, invest in the offensive line. And I think you're totally right, Matt. I would not be opposed to the Patriots going out and drafting a right tackle next year and saying, okay, we got a left tackle of the future. If Will Campbell, hopefully we get what we think we're going to get from Will Campbell at left tackle. And then, we go out and draft a right tackle next year, and we have our left and right tackle for the next 10 years. And that would be, ideal.
Yeah. All right. Should we do a little ad break here?
Let's do it. This ad break, of course, is for Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has more daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. All right. Now, listen, I love Prize Picks, right? And again, basketball playoffs have started. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players on the court on your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, or all three. Right? Take your pick on more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. And again, basketball playoffs aren't the only playoffs going on. Hockey playoffs are starting right now. Baseball is going on. And again, Prize Picks is going to allow you to mix and match your sports. Now, whether that's, where you want to mix basketball with hockey, and then you got baseball going on, you can mix all of those things together. And again, you can win up to 2,000 times your cash. Every Tuesday is Taco Tuesday for Prize Picks. Taco Tuesday, there are players are discounted on all of your boards. And on Fridays is Flex Fridays. You can flex some of your lineups, and it becomes a flex play where you get that money back in the form of promotional money if you lose. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to download the app Prize Picks. You're going to put in the promo code CLNS. When you do that, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Okay? So again, download the app Prize Picks. Put in the promo code CLNS. And when you play your first $5 lineup, you're going to get $50 instantly. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Matt. Oh, Boss GM points out that we were missing 377 on the ticker. Thanks, Boss GM. Appreciate you.
Yep, you're correct. That is a glitch on my end.
Appreciate you. That was that's what happens when Matt has to do all of the things. Matt does all of the things, and I just show up. And sometimes I show up with like terrible audio, and here we are. But we've made it. I gotta tell you, Matt. I know you're a New York guy. I went to go see Dungeons and Dragons tonight at the 20-sided tavern, I believe it is. It's like an interactive show. It was awesome. It was so much fun. It was a blast. And so highly recommended if you're in New York. It's a little bit off Broadway, but it was so much fun. My 8-year-old had a blast. There are, it's improv. So there are some inappropriate moments, but like not anything super inappropriate, and most of it was over his head anyways. But they do swear a few times, and but it was great. It was a blast. We had a ton of fun. So anyways, that's what we did tonight. All right, let's get into our pick. Our pick, number 4 overall, the Patriots take Will Campbell. And here's what I'll say about Will Campbell. And I look, we've gone back and forth for weeks, maybe even months on this, right? The arm length is an issue. It is absolutely an issue, and I totally understand that. I get it. I understand if people are uncomfortable with the arm length, or they think that the arm length won't work. I get it. I understand, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. What I will tell you, and I tweeted this out earlier today, you can question the arm length. You can question whether you think he can physically do it. One thing you cannot question is his heart and desire. This kid is willing to give everything. He's mentioned it over and over again. He said, like, I will die for my quarterback out there. Right? I mean, that's it right here, Boss GM. I will fight and die to protect Drake May. Like, that's the type of guy that you're getting. Every single thing from everybody in that front office and on the Patriots staff, all they talked about was how impressed they were with him as a person. And I think that when you're trying to rebuild the culture of your team, that's the type of guy that you want to pick with your first pick. Now, again, can he play left tackle? I don't know. I think he can. I know there are people, including Matt, that don't think that he can, and maybe they'll be right. I don't know, but I'm gonna have faith in Mike Vrabel for now, and then we'll see what happens after that.
I don't know, man. We're talking about the number 4 overall pick in the draft, and we're leading off with he's a great guy. I don't know. I feel like I got to know he can play left tackle in the NFL to take him at number 4. I like a lot about the person that is Will Campbell. I think there's a lot of good tape. I'm not even like it's numbers wise. I think there's a lot to like here. He's got the young breakout age, starter at a power conference as a true freshman, number 5 overall on the consensus board, and the top offensive lineman. He's got the personality. Hell, he even had his arms measure in at 33 inches at one point. So he meets numbers wise all of the threshold. I just at no point in this process bought into his tape being good enough to be the best tackle, the best first offensive lineman off the board. Smart people disagree with me. He was the top offensive lineman on the consensus board, so it was close between he and Membo. So, like, I get the pick. I understand how you get here. Very willing and open about being wrong on the tape on this, but I'm concerned that he's just a guy with a great personality who's going to be stuck between positions in the NFL. I never thought his tape was as good as a lot of people, like his technique on tape was as good as a lot of people said. I think the issue is his technique. I think athletically he's really good. The issue is that he plays too high at points and he oversets in his pass drops and lets people win to the inside. You see this last year, 2023, you see it 2024. I didn't necessarily see improvement there. So it's like, all right, I'm not necessarily confident at all that he's going to be able to play left tackle at a high level in the NFL. And if we're projecting him switching positions, like, all right, that's the projection that we're making with a top 4 pick. And I'd feel a lot more comfortable with the higher valuable one like Membu, where it's tackle to tackle versus maybe tackle to guard in Campbell's case. So I still have my concerns. I was going to be rooting for him. I love his personality. I love what he's going to bring to the locker room. I think all that stuff is fantastic. And I think it's clear that leadership was needed. May is not the most vocal leader anyway. So, like, having that kind of guy who can learn from Morgan Moses this year too, and you can make your offensive line a focal point if you're the identity of this team, I think is important. I think that's awesome going forward. And you look at the top tackles in this class, in my eyes, like, I didn't think Kelvin Banks was a tackle personally. I thought if he was a tackle, he was a right tackle, but I thought he was a guard. That's what I saw on tape. And then Membu, apparently there were some personality concerns, which kind of came up late in the process. Didn't sound like it was anything crazy, but a little something. Then you've got Simmons with the injury issue. So, and then Connerly actually goes before Simmons, who I think Campbell's tape's probably better than Connerly's. So, like, I get how you get here. Just don't love it at 4. If you're picking at 10, I love this. I think this is great. But like I mentioned Fuaga before, I think profile-wise, he's someone who's very similar to Campbell. Size is similar. Athleticism is similar. Both young starters who played for 3 years in college and came out. Fuaga went at 10 or 11 last year, which is probably where Campbell goes in a normal draft. Fuaga struggled at left tackle this season. He in pass block grade, he was 25th out of 28 guys who played a lot of left tackle snaps. Behind guys like Vidarian Lowe, Cam Robinson, Dan Moore. So, and the Saints just drafted a tackle again after that. So that, I think, is kind of my concern. That's our most recent look at a guy with this profile in the NFL. I will say this. The reason I mentioned the Saints thing, though, I think there's a lot to like about Campbell's tape as a potential right tackle if he doesn't work at left tackle. And I do think there's a world where he switches to right tackle after a year and they draft another left tackle next year who's more of a pure left tackle pass protector prospect. And then you let Campbell and Onwenu work together on the front side of run plays and stuff after a year of Moses over there. I can see that. But yeah, definitely hoping I'm wrong on my evaluations here.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry. There's I don't know what the hell's going on down here, but there's people make a hell of a lot of noise. Anyways, listen, I think all your concerns are valid. I really do. And I understand that you feel that way. And I know that a lot of people feel that way. I don't feel that way, right? I disagree with it. I think that he was the best offensive lineman available this year. And the Patriots desperately needed offensive linemen.
That's a consensus opinion. Right. I'm definitely the one that's differing here.
Yeah, but you're not though. And you are sure, but you're not alone. It's not like you're the only one saying that. And I think that's you look at Brandon Thorne, and Brandon Thorne talks glowingly about Will Campbell and loves Will Campbell and says that he's going to be a phenomenal player and a potential All-Pro. And then he lists him as an interior offensive lineman 1. And I'm like, oh, God.
That evaluation is entirely at guard. He talked on the Athletic podcast, I think it was today. I think it was this morning that show came out, speaking glowingly about him, and the entire thing is yep, he's a guard. He's going to be really good at it, but he's a guard.
Right. And so, and maybe that's the case. Now, listen, Duke Manyweather, who's also the other, I would say him and Brandon Thorne are kind of the two most respected offensive lineman guys, certainly at least out there at large. He has him as his offensive tackle number 1. So, the consensus might be that he's the best offensive lineman. Where he's going to be and what he's going to play is a different scenario. And I just think for the Patriots, and listen, do I want to draft a guard at number 4 overall? No. Do I want to project him at guard? Do I want to say, well, if it doesn't work out, he can play guard? I don't want to do that. But I also didn't love the situation that they were in either, because you couldn't trade back because no one wanted to move up with you.
Yeah.
You were in that situation. Then you're in another situation where you say, okay, well, then who do I draft? All right, I don't love Will Campbell. Now who do I take? I'm not taking Ashton Genty. Well, now who am I taking?
You're in no man's land,
right? And so you just say, we love the guy, we love the culture fit, we think he can play left tackle, we believe that he can play left tackle, and I love, and listen, it doesn't matter, it's all bluster, but where he's saying, since I was 14 years old, people have been questioning my size. I came here to LSU and they questioned whether I could play left tackle, and then I came in and played left tackle and dominated left tackle, and so now I'm going in doing the same thing, playing left tackle, and people are doing the same thing, and we're starting this process all over again. And he goes, I'm going to go out and prove that I can play left tackle here as well. And so I like that part of it, but again, he's got to go out there and prove that he can actually do it on the field, and we'll see if he can.
Well, I just wouldn't describe what Will Campbell did last season as dominating. For comparison here, Joe Alt, who was the first tackle taken last year in 2023, his final season before being drafted, he allowed 5 pressures all season long. Will Campbell allowed 18. That's still good. It's one of the better numbers for a tackle last year, but it is over 3 times as many. Obviously, slightly tougher schedule there for LSU than Notre Dame, but not enough to explain that big of a discrepancy there.
I have an opinion that I believe Joe Alt would be the number 1 pick in this draft, the first player taken in this draft.
I think he probably ends up going after Hunter because of the uniqueness of Hunter, but he is undoubtedly in the same tier as Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and to me, above Carter. Yeah. So it's one of those judging if you judge Will Campbell by other top tackle picks, he's going to fall pretty far behind. If you judge him by other offensive line picks in this draft, it's easy to see how he ends up being the top guy. I think my big concern with Campbell is they ends up being the world's greatest sixth offensive lineman because he's like a low quality starter at like basically every spot on the line and a teammate that everyone loves, and he has a long career and successful career on good teams and isn't really ever a long term starter anywhere. But like what I will say, it kind of to go against myself here. I didn't necessarily see the development with Will Campbell I wanted to see, and that is not unique to him in this LSU offense. Emory Jones, the right tackle, was also someone I didn't see the development I wanted to see this year. And I do just wonder if they didn't develop their offensive lineman at well LSU. And I think some of his issues are not about athleticism at all. They're actually about technique. People talk about how he has the best technique. I think he's got good technique. I think he had very good technique at a young age. I think he worked very hard and can improve his technique. I think there are a couple issues. Again, like I said before, namely oversetting and pad level are the two things that I notice. So he's a very nimble athlete. He's got great core strength, and he still has played very well despite some athletic limitations and technique issues, in my opinion. So if with his mental ability and hard work, in theory, you can work through some of that technique. And like if he could also be a Pro Bowl left tackle or Pro Bowl right tackle by the end of year 2 by developing into this stuff. I will also say he should be an improvement on Vidarian Love from year 1. He's got to be.
I agree with. I'm with you on that. And we'll see. But I'm happy with the pick. I like it a lot. I think Boss GM has a good point. And I don't know if it was possible, but 34 and a 2025 first to move up and get all
Last year.
And I think that's a lot to give up. However, when you look at a prospect like Joe Alt and you see the talent that is there, if you were able to get someone that was willing to do it, I think it would have made a ton of sense. Where are you going to get a better left tackle? You desperately needed a left tackle. Well, you're talking about the best left tackle prospect in how many years? Years of the last decade, probably. And so, when are you going to get another opportunity to take that guy? And I think it would have been worth to trade this 2020. And obviously, we know where we're at right now. And maybe Will Campbell. Listen, I love Will Campbell, and I'm happy that the Patriots have him. But would I have been on board with trading Jalen Polk and Will Campbell for Joe Alt? Probably. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. What I will say is I don't think the Chargers accept that. I think Jim Harbaugh fell in love with Joe Alt. Yeah, I think Jim Harbaugh fell in love there. So, I think it was going to take a lot to move him off of that pick. And I can't tell if Pat's about to get kicked out right now or not. But yeah. I think in hindsight, you would have loved to do that trade and move up and go get Alt last year. I think it's just would have been very difficult to make that move happen. Unfortunately, probably not realistic. But yeah, so it's I all the things I said about Will Campbell, I see the upside. I love.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I have been kicked out, and so I'm gonna go sit in front of my room, and we can finish our conversation because I do want to talk about the second round.
I can also just take it. I can do the ad read and take it from here if you want, and we can finish it tomorrow.
Do the ad read, and then I'll pop back in. I'll try to pop back in at least, and we can talk about just what the Patriots targets should be tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you. I'll see you in a bit. Hey, listen. I said I might get arrested on live on the live stream. I didn't get arrested, but I was asked to leave. So I'll be back, hopefully.
And with that, I am going to talk to you guys about it's a great segue into an ad read. I'm sure GameTime absolutely loves this. But yeah, we're going to talk about GameTime. It's NBA playoff season. Celtics, up 2-0 in that series. They got a Friday night game here in Orlando. They're trying to take a 3-0 lead on the Magic. If you want to go to an NBA playoff game, take in the environment, see the run here as the Celtics try to go for banner 19. Nobody's going to do that easier than GameTime. You can use the GameTime app to buy tickets to not just NBA playoff games, but if you want to go to a concert, you want to go to a show, you want to go to any other sporting event going on right now, GameTime is going to get it done. And with their killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, they take the guesswork out of buying whatever tickets that you're buying. With last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying for last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. They have zone deals, all-in pricing, so you hit that all-in pricing button. The price you see is the price that you were going to pay for those tickets, not a penny more. They got seat views, so you can see what the view is going to be from that section, so you know what you're getting yourself into in advance. Got a lowest price guarantee, and their GameTime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket agency. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, I'm just gonna stay in this solo right here as we wait to see if Pat is gonna be able to stay on the show or not. We're gonna look at the big board right now, going into round 2. So these are some of the guys that are still on the board. The number 10 overall player by consensus, Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan, someone I really like, still on the board. Adam Schefter tweeted out that he has some knee issues going on, which contribute to him falling as far as he has. Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, I believe the NCAA sack leader last year, 16 on the consensus board. He has fallen. He has some off-field concerns that are at play there. Shedeur Sanders, number 22 overall, quarterback out of Colorado. Interesting case all around here. He is still on the board. Jackson Dart goes ahead of him here at the end of the first round. Those are your top 25 by consensus prospects that are still on the board. Other interesting names: Nick Emanwuri, safety out of South Carolina with a freakish testing at the combine. Luther Burden, the Mizzou wide receiver, who a lot of people really like. Donovan Eziraku, the edge from Boston College. Savon Revel, corner from East Carolina. Nick Scorton, the edge from Texas A&M. Those are some guys that we like. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll are on the board, obviously still. Mason Taylor, the tight end, still on the board. So a lot of names to like if you're New England. You are looking for a pass rusher. There's going to be a couple here at the top. I think Scorton and Eziraku are two names that really stand out here. Scorton, I've liked as a scheme fit through the whole process. And anytime you get a Boston College guy at a position of need, a pass rusher, that is something that jumps off the board to me. Will Johnson is interesting. I don't know if it's tough to evaluate the medical stuff there. Arante Ursary as a left tackle from Minnesota who's on the board. I don't think that they would double up at the position, but with Morgan Moses being an older player who they can kind of go year to year with at right tackle, if there's another tackle on the board at 38 that the team really likes, I think that's something they can absolutely look at doing. A lot of corners. Trevion Henderson, the running back from Ohio State, who's 40th by consensus. Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker from UCLA, who's 44th. He seems like a variable guy. So those are some obvious picks right off the bat. We'll look at the draft order as we get into round 2. So the Browns are going to have 2 picks here before the Patriots are on the board. They pick at 33 and then again at 36. The Houston Texans are going to be picking at 34. So that is from their trade back with the Giants. So that's the Jackson Dart trade. And the Titans at 35 and the Raiders pick at 37. So that right there is a string of teams that the Patriots are going to have to wait behind. I think I feel good about their chances because you have to think with those 2 Browns picks, one of them is going to be a quarterback. So that's going to be one player at a position of need that's not going to go. Texans, you have to think, are going to go offensive line. That might end up being Ursery. That might end up being a guard. I'm not sure. Looking at the guards, Savania from Arizona is definitely an interesting prospect for them. He's the next ranked offensive lineman after Ursery. So I think that would probably make a lot of sense for Houston. So I think that's going to be quarterback, offensive lineman to start off the second round. I don't know what the Titans are going to end up doing. I don't know what the Browns are going to end up doing with pick number 4 in the second round. And Raiders, I have no clue. But I think if you're New England, if you want to come away with a pass catcher, if Luther Burden's there, that interests me a lot. And Jalen Knoll, Mason Taylor, Jaden Higgins, all pass catchers that would also interest me a lot at that position. And the fact that you got, I think, 3 pass catchers that intrigue me, at least 2 pass rushers. I do not think that Mike Green is going to be on New England's board with some of the outstanding allegations against him. I don't think New England will be interested. So I think you're between those 2 positions, you can get someone. And the fact that you have a quality running back in Henderson, a number of quality corners with not just Will Johnson but Siobhan Revel, Trey Amos, Azaria Thomas as guys that they could go after. I think New England's in really good shape here to even potentially trade back if they would want to. So obviously we see how the board falls here on day 2, but I really like where the Patriots are. We've been going, I think, for about 10 minutes since Pat got kicked out. So I think that's going to wrap it for us here on an adventurous night 1 of the draft. Oh, and he's checking back in as we speak.
What's up?
I just finished. I was just about to wrap up. So.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. So who looking at for tomorrow? What's your guy for top of your list tomorrow?
I talked about a couple here. Well, I think top of my list right now is Luther Burden, if you can get him. But I think the fact, of the top 3 guys who are still here by consensus, Will Johnson has a knee injury. He's a guy, if he's still on the board when you pick, you have to think about it. But it's hard to say from the outside without knowing the severity of the injury. Mike Green, I don't think he's going to be on their board. And Shedeur Sanders, you're not taking a quarterback. Yeah. So I think Burden's the best player on the board who will also be in contention. Ezraku from Boston College. Ezraku and Scorton, the fact that you got 2 defensive linemen, 2 pass rushers. I think both are scheme fits. Both make sense for this team. I like those. And then you still got the Iowa State receivers and Mason Taylor.
And Trey Amos, don't forget, as well, and, if they decide to go corner.
And Reffel, and Benjamin Morrison, and Azaria Thomas. So
which is wild.
And Trevion Henderson, if they really like him. And then the other name I threw out there, I don't think he's going to be the pick, but Arante Ursery. If there's a world with Morgan Moses being a year-to-year guy at right tackle, if you want to invest in another tackle, I think if you like him, you are more than free to double up there.
And I think that makes a ton of sense. And did you mention Scorton? I was just about to mention Scorton, and then I see Boss GM mentioned him.
That's Scorton and Burden. Scorton, Burden, Taylor, I think, are the 3 I like the most here. Those 3 different spots.
If you can get an impact edge rusher at this pick, I think that's a home run. Seems to be the need that they have the most. I think that would be great. So we'll see what they end up with. But man, if they're able to pull that off and end up with Nick Scorton, that would be sick. That's a guy that I'm shocked didn't get picked in the first round. I'm shocked Trey Amos didn't get picked in the first round. I'm surprised that some of these guys didn't get picked in the first round. But it's
Maxwell Hairston going ahead of those guys. The Bills surprised me a little bit. But yeah, and then going through the draft order before the Patriots pick, Browns pick twice. One of those is going to be a quarterback. The Texans pick, you got to think that's going to be offensive line. So that's either going to be Ursery or that's going to be Savania. So 5 picks for the Pats are on the board. You feel like 2 of them. What the Raiders do, what the Titans do, what the Browns do with their other pick, I don't know.
Right.
Those are, that could be, Luther Burden and Ezraku and Scorton with those.
Right. And now you're like, now what?
And
And
if
then
that happened,
I think you pivot. I think I'd love to see a corner. How many good corners on the board? If those guys are gone, I would love to see a corner because I think that it's a sneaky need for you. And you can get a guy in Trey Amos who was a consensus first round pick. And I think people would be really happy with that. Now, maybe they wouldn't be happy the fact that, that they get a guy that, they get another corner. Maybe they don't love the position, but I think that, the player is definitely well worth it.
now here's something for you. How the Patriots kind of right or wrong, if you will, from last year, move up from 38 to 34, take Luther Burden at 34, go off and get your receiver at 34.
Oh, baby.
Jump Tennessee. I'm sure the Texans would be willing to do that trade back. Because they could still be an offensive lineman at 38. I don't think that Ursary and Savania go if they like both of those.
I can't imagine, no, especially if you're trading up and you're not going offensive line. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think you're right that Houston probably would be willing to do it. What are you giving up for? Maybe 106?
I got a calculator right here. I'm gonna throw in and see what it says they'd have to give up for this because you're moving up from 38 to 34.
And the Patriots gave up what, like one? I mean, sorry, the Patriots got back like what, 130 or something like that, 130 something last year.
Yeah. No, that's literally by my draft pick calculator. Pick 130 to 132 is in range for that. And what the Patriots have, let's wait for it to scroll by. You got 106.
Is it
144?
Yeah. So you wouldn't trade 106 unless you got something else back in return.
But if you do 144 and 238 or 220, there's no difference in 220 and 238 here.
But that would be something, I think. That would probably be enough.
Or if you do 104, let's see, who are we?
If you did 106, you'd have to get back something else back for him.
Or sorry, 106. Why do I keep saying 104?
I don't know. Well, 144 maybe.
Yeah, but you could probably get something back from Houston. I'm just going to see what their
maybe like a fifth. I'm not sure what they have for picks left, but
yeah, 179 maybe. I don't know if that works.
But either way, regardless of what it was, you could finagle things around a little bit to make that move. I think if the Patriots are interested in someone, it makes a ton of sense. If they look at the board and just say, man, we'd be happy with Scorton, the BC kid, Trey Amos, and Luther Burden, and those guys we'd be happy with all those guys. Great. Then don't move. Stay there and take the guy at 38 and go from there, So
let the board fall to you. And
Yep.
And I think there's, even if the board doesn't fall the way you want it, you're going to have a good corner on the board for sure.
Yeah.
You're going to have good running backs on the board for sure. And you're at a point where I wouldn't even hate reaching on one of the Iowa State guys there. Noel or Higgins, I think I could be okay with. And maybe do a small trade back. Like you do what you did last year. Do a small trade back and then grab the receiver you want. You're just hoping, you're getting the right guy this time.
Well, now what did we do? We traded back to like 50 and drafted Jaden Higgins at 50, right? On Monday night. So it's looking like that's a possibility at this point, right? And again, maybe it's Noel, but regardless, you move back to 50, you pick up a few extra picks, and now you're talking about getting a wide receiver that you like. So,
Well, I think one of the keys here too is going to be, what do teams think of Will Johnson and Mike Green? How far do they fall? Because I did, something we talked about before is the fact that guys have typically fallen. At least one or two guys every year will fall in that range.
Yeah.
And sometimes just looking back at some of these guys in the past, like Randy Gregory, it's very different from Mike Green, but I think there's some overlap there in profile. Ranked 12th by consensus, he fell all the way to 60. Could Mike Green fall that far?
He free falled.
Yeah. Medically, a different situation, but Mo Hurst for the Raiders, he's a guy who had a heart condition show up at the combine, and then they weren't sure it was going to go on there. He was 21st by consensus. He fell all the way to 140.
Yeah, he was way down. I remember that. He's actually from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
His
And
dad played for
then,
the Patriots.
yeah. But like most of the guys who fall get drafted either right like 38, 39 or low 40s. Like Cooper DeJean last year, 40. Andrew Booth, a corner with injury concerns, went at 42.
Right.
Barmore and Tevin Jenkins went 38 and 39. Yeah, so I wouldn't be shocked to see someone like Will Johnson come off the board here for Tennessee if they
Right.
feel comfortable taking that chance here. Hell, I mean, it's Cleveland probably use that. I think Will Johnson's a fit for what they do. He'd be a fit for the Raiders too, for what they do defensively.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
So,
Brady with the
lots of-
Michigan connection. I don't know if that would actually matter there, but
yeah, but still. So,
but
lots of interesting.
if you're here and you're in New England, if there's a world where Shedeur or a quarterback is going to be one of these picks,
right,
and you think Will Johnson and Mike Green are also going to go, and you think the Texans are going to take an offensive lineman, that's 4 out of 5 picks that you feel like you have accounted for.
yeah,
I don't think that Will Johnson and Mike Green go. I think that at least one of those guys falls, and I'm probably not interested. If they fall to you at 38, I'm probably not interested if I'm in New England.
Probably
because
not.
There's reasons for it.
Yeah,
and I'm not. Mike Green to me is a hard no for New England.
I would agree.
Will Johnson is
depends on the medicals.
Total unknown.
Yeah,
but with Vrabel's history of not liking guys with medical issues, I think
you would think it's a no. Yeah,
which is funny. There was a point on this podcast we were talking about could Will Johnson be in play at 4?
At 4, I know. So,
but
anyways, all right. Well, that's it. So we got a lot of stuff going on, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We got a lot of stuff going on. It's a big weekend. Obviously, Patriots got at least 3 picks tomorrow if they decide to make all 3 of them. And we'll be back talking with you as well. I think we're probably just going to do the end of the night tomorrow night. But
yeah,
Matt and I will chat about that. And we'll let you know if something changes. But right now, plan for just the end of the night tomorrow night, just like tonight. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We appreciate it. And, be good to each other and go Pats.